Hey fellas, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. Today we're in Daniel chapter 3. I'm going to read verses 1 through 7. But for just a second, let's recall where we've been. So King Nebuchadnezzar is the king who rules the planet at the time. He has recently overpowered the nation of Judah and the holy city of Jerusalem, taking captive some of the best and the brightest of God's people. Then 4 young men become the center of the story of Daniel. They, of course, are Daniel, and then his 3 buds, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They are then walked hundreds of miles to the city of Babylonia, which is in modern-day Iraq. 3 things then happen. First, they are re-educated at a liberal university in Babylonia, which indoctrinates them with secular philosophy. Second, they are physically mutilated by castration, which is slightly more than circumcision, but not as far as sexual reassignment. And to top it all off, they are given new pronouns, new names, that delete God's name from their very identity. I think these 3 occurrences are fascinating given the signs of our times and what we're witnessing happening within our own culture, aren't they? Chapter 2, then Nebuchadnezzar has this terrifying dream and demands someone tell him the dream that he had privately and the interpretation. Otherwise, he's going to slay all the magicians and seers in the land. And right at the last minute, Daniel comes forward to tell him the dream and the interpretation, which is miraculous, by the way. And for a second at the end of chapter 2, we witness what appears to be a reverent king. But don't be fooled, because we haven't gotten to chapter 3 yet. So now we fast forward about 20 years or so. Daniel is about 30 by this time, and here's what happens next in Babylonia. It just keeps getting worse. Chapter 3, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, an image of himself, by the way, of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. So it's 90 feet tall, fellas, and 9 feet wide. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent together, get your breath here, the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, and the treasurers, and the justices, and the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Not a choice, by the way, a mandate. Then the satraps, and the prefects, and the governors, and the counselors, and the treasurers, and the justices, and the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So what this is, fellas, is political theater. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, and nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, that you're to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace." Clearly, there was a furnace close by, probably that was used to heat the gold. They've got it all fired up and ready to go. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples and nations and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So, we discover that the king here didn't have a problem with self-esteem. Who is arrogant enough to build a statue of themselves that's 6 stories tall, of gold, by the way? Yet you should know that lots of monarchs have done things just like this. In fact, you can find shrines like this today in countries like China and even North Korea. But this king goes one step further. He gathers his political forces, not for a vote, but to deliver a mandate. He demands that everyone bow down and worship him or be put to death by a fiery furnace. So I think we can safely assume that this guy has a little bit of a messiah complex. And you thought your boss was an arrogant narcissist? Fellas, this guy wins the award. But here's the deal. You might think Nebuchadnezzar's a little nuts here, but honestly, he's just a depiction of the sinfulness and the selfishness that lies in every dude's heart. He is a manifestation of how arrogant we can all become. The difference between him and us is that he's got the power and the wealth to display it shamelessly because he really doesn't care what anybody thinks. But here's the harsh truth. We all have the same desire. We might be a little bit better at hiding it, but all men have these lurching desires to possess power and control. For example, when we don't get power and control at work, well, we come home and try to exert that power and control. And when we can't have it there, we can't get it at home, then we coach youth sports to exert some means of control over other people, right? It might be a little bit laughable, but there's some truth in this because we long for it and we want it. Yet the problem with this kind of power and control is that it's manufactured from selfish desires based upon deep feelings of insecurity and fear. And because of insecure, fear-based control, worship is demanded and dictated and punished when not obeyed, which is exactly what King Nebuchadnezzar is doing in this situation. Yet, this is exactly the opposite of how God leads, isn't it? God leads from pure love and true justice, giving a man a choice to obey so that his worship is freely offered because of who God is and how God leads. And fellas, this is exactly why we must daily and regularly worship God. As we worship God, we submit our fears and our insecurities to Him. We break down and destroy the idols of selfishness that are lurching for power and control in our lives. So today, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment, just a moment, to confess a selfish desire in the comments below. Give that selfish desire to God as a showing of sacrifice and worship to Him. And then just take a moment to listen to that worship song I've posted below. Give Him glory for who He is. Fellas, I hope this helps today. I hope it serves you well. If it has, I pray you'll share it with someone you know. And with that, I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.